on today's episode of Stories from Real Life with Melvin E. Edwards. Our guest this week is Adam Spencer. Adam is a sports agent, contract negotiator, and advocate for professional athletes. As the owner of Spencer Group International, Adam sits at the junction of sports marketing, sports administration, and athlete and talent management. He joins us this morning from his home base in Seattle, Washington. Let's join this week's guest, Adam Spencer, and your host, Melvin E. Edwards.
Happy New Year and welcome to the first episode of Stories from Real Life for 2025. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thanks for joining me on this week's storytelling journey. As you heard in the intro, our guest this week is sports agent Adam Lee Spencer. Hello, Adam, and thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Melvin, grace, peace, and mercy to you, brother. How things going?
Pretty good so far. So glad to have you here. So from what I understand, you're from tiny Gloucester, Virginia, and you now live in Seattle. So do you miss going to the Daffodil Festival?
Okay, I see where we're going with this.
This is the only one that's off topic, I promise.
You were on some Shannon Sharp stuff. Okay. No, I do not miss going to the Daffodil Festival because I found out it's not the only one in the world, so it's nothing exciting.
So
Go ahead. Take me back about 25, 35 years ago when I thought it was the only one. Okay, maybe.
But not now. You're a world traveler now. All right, so how does the Great Northwest compare to where you're from in the Mid-Atlantic area?
Here, the pace moves a lot faster, but it's not New York, Chicago. I've never spent time in LA, but I can only imagine what LA is like. So it's enough city vibes to keep me sane, but just enough real stuff to, as a healthy reminder, stay home, stay humble.
Stay humble. So how did your military career prepare you for a career in sports management?
Well, I think for those that know anything about the military, I was a non-commissioned officer for 16 years. And part of being a non-commissioned officer is getting your NCOER. That's basically your report card for the year. And for the most part, especially when you're dealing with troops, where you got troops working with you as in a subordinate level, lower ranked troops, however you want to put it, growth, their accomplishments, their achievements, pretty much write your NCOER. What you do on your own can pretty much just be icing on the cake. So one of the things I've learned is, number one, you don't do it alone. And secondly, if you look out for people, it'll come back to you. So with sports, with management of and representation of folks, I take it as a athlete and talent first mentality. I'm very honest. I tell folks, I love sports. I love what I do, but I'm trying to make a couple nickels out of this. And I can't do that unless you're healthy, mentally stable, and fully functioning.
Okay. So now that we're in the NIL era of college sports, is it more challenging to represent college athletes or professional athletes?
Well, I don't think there's a challenge. There's a difference in the challenge. It's all the same now. I think the entry point is much younger. And I think that's how you build. That's where the relationships are built now. The relationships are built much younger. So there's navigating the family, which you're going to have to do with somebody 22, 24, 30, 35, 40 years old. And there's navigating the environment around them, helping them to navigate the environment around them also. So I don't think it changes that much. Obviously, yes, At times, it can be a much younger client you're dealing with, but we live in 2024, and with so much information out there now, you're not, you know, dealing with someone wet behind the ears normally. If it's not them, there's somebody around them that's getting information.
Okay. So I'm wondering about the future of the NCAA. Do you think it could dissolve and then each college athletic director or each college athletic program become something like an LLC, is operating independently?
I don't think it's going to go that far, but it's going to be hard to avoid because really it's always been there. As far as the boosters go, the boosters have always been there. What I think will happen is you'll see some of the major companies have an influence at each level. You'll see the financial powers have some form of an influence at each level. I think that influence may be a bit more relegated with the idea of, you know, the revenue sharing that should be coming after April. But yeah, I do think you'll see some sort of outside financial backing that's not the television deal, that's not the ticket sales, that's not the money from Nike, Adidas, New Balance, Under Armour, you name it. That's not the money from tuition fees.
All right, you mentioned revenue sharing. So how do collective bargaining laws impact future NIL deals?
That's going to be very convoluted. I think we'll find out more as whatever happens. Most people will tell you that they feel like, if you look at it, they feel like the NCAA is trying to drag back control over the whole thing. And the process seems like the NCAA is trying to get the third party out of it, if you will. That's the agents. That's, you know, maybe not the boosters, but it's, you know, it's other outside entities. The NCAA is trying to control it all, which I don't know if it's going to work or not, because we got to this space with the NCAA controlling it all. So yeah, I think the athletes have a trump card, and that's unionization. I don't know how unionization gets avoided, especially if you go to revenue sharing. The kind of, I guess, loophole or gray space right now is that you're still not considering the athlete at the college, at the NCAA level, an employee. That's going to be the fight, if you will. I think that's coming. That's the fight of the future is, okay, how are we labeling the athlete? Is he or she an employee or not? Because you look at these athletes and, you know, in the revenue driving sports, that's both basketballs and football. Just cut to the chase, stop all the, you know, the nonsense. The revenue drivers are in football and in both basketballs. You know, some schools got their niches of track, baseball, that may draw in some money, softball, depending on the program, soccer, depending on the program. Some schools have that, sure, fine, got it. But it's still football and basketball that, you know, are driving the revenue. So yeah, that's where it is. And I think one of the things that you're going to have to watch is the TV money. As you look at what's happened since Texas and Oklahoma jumped ship. Okay. between 2028 and 2032, I believe it is going to be the next round of negotiations. Folks, different conferences at the negotiating table. The RSNs are gone. And for folks that don't know what RSN is, that's your regional sports network. They are dead in the water. If you look at it, most, the RSNs have leaned heavily and made their name and made their business with regional and local baseball, hockey, and basketball coverage. You look at most of the teams now because of what's happened with Diamond Sports, Valley Sports. That was the old Fox RSNs. They got bounced around all over the place. Because of the challenges with the RSNs, the growth of streaming, the RSNs are becoming a thing of the past. If you look, most teams now are going back to local television covering the game. And so the question becomes, if you listen to a lot of industry folks, the question becomes, okay, so how are we going to pay for this? You look at the money that the Big Ten just got. Okay. With Penn State and Ohio State and Oregon now in the quarterfinals, the money they're asking, the money that that conference is going to ask for, it's only going to jump. It's not going to get lower. So just last year, they expanded the playoff to 12 teams, what you see going on this year. Soon as they said, okay, we're going to play, a ruling came down, it's confirmed, we're going to go to 12 teams. You already had a conversation about it needs to go to 14. So, which means more money. You look at how the TV deals are being done. TNT leased the broadcast, if you will, from ESPN. Because if you notice, that was Mark Jones and Roddy White on the Penn State game from ESPN. Halftime was Booger McFarlane and Kevin Nagandi. That's all ESPN people. So we're going to get to a place of, okay, where's the money going to come from? And then, okay, how do we divvy the money out? How does that get shared between the school and the athlete?
Now that leads me into my next question. Are we in a gray area right now like baseball, Major League Baseball was in the 70s with compensation and protection for free agency?
Oh, we've been there. And one of the concerns I have is the way we have the conversation. We have these very public conversations where we're pretty much chastising the athlete constantly for having agency, for having autonomy now, when we were perfectly fine with the coach, the athletic director, and the president of the school being able to move about however they wanted to when the next job came up, or get fired and you bring somebody else in. So everything, and within that, we're holding the athlete to this moral standard, but you're letting a coach come in, tell young man or young woman, hey, we're going to be here for your time, whatever that looks like at said university. When said coach's agent is out here politicking for the next job or the next pay raise. But we're in a place where we're trying to control the athletes, or we're concerned about the athlete's ability to move and have agency and make decisions for him or herself.
Okay, and this is a different sport here, but I understand you work with WNBA players and the league. So do you,
I work in international basketball, but I understand the WNBA.
Okay, so do you think there's a market for Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese to elevate the WNBA together like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird did for the NBA back in the 80s?
Oh, boy. I think we have to understand, first and foremost, the women's basketball, the women's NCAA tournament was growing long before Caitlin Clark set foot on campus at Iowa. So we have to put that into context first and foremost. And let's give credit where credit is due. You know, however you spin it or however we got to that point, her name is elevating the profile of the league. We have to admit that. Now, I think there's a lot of context to that, and there's a lot of social conversations that, you know, sooner or later as grown folks and adults, we got to have with that. Because I think part of the challenge in the conversation with Caitlin Clark and, you know, namely Angel Reese, is that we never dealt with the social context and the contextualized conversations that were needed when it was Magic versus Bird. So if we didn't want to deal with the social undertone, the racial undertone, and the class undertone of the conversation when it was Bird and Magic, how in the hell do you think we're going to deal with it when it's Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and we have those in media spaces pitting Caitlin Clark versus black women? Drill down, we've got those in a media space basically pitting Caitlin Clark versus black queer women. We're supposed to deal with that in the environment we live in, but you didn't deal with it in 1980. I was 4 in 1980, and we're supposed to deal with it. And so we're supposed to have this contextualized and thoughtful conversation now in this environment we live in. Come on.
If not now, when?
Very true. It's not. I guess my concern is that it's not going to be thoughtful, and it's going. I see it as very hard to end well.
Okay, so let's talk about you as an agent. So how do you typically get your clients? Do you seek them out, or do they know you by your established reputation and they come looking for you?
If you've done the right things, that means you've registered with said governing body, said organization, said league, said players association. So obviously I have a social media profile with my company. And I'm registered right now. I'm on FIBA's website. You can Google me on FIBA. You can find me on FIBA's website. I spent 5 years with international soccer also. Their regulations changed, and I didn't get grandfathered in. So hopefully by May of this coming year, that'll be taken care of, and I'll be back doing soccer. And we'll hopefully be moving into other sports this year also. But yeah, you know, whatever sport you're in, the first thing you should, if you're an athlete, the first thing you should do is look for that person to be registered with some governing body. I don't care what sport it is. If that person's not registered in some way, shape, or form with some governing body, I would probably stay away from them. And it doesn't matter, no matter the sport or the marketing and branding opportunity that you think or that they tell you they can help you with.
All right. So if I'm the parent of a star high school athlete, potential college star athlete, or professional athlete, and I want to consider you as an agent, what kind of pitch do you give for that parent to convince that parent that you can give their child the kind of one-on-one attention that they would be looking for?
I'm a function in this manner. Obviously, you're going to get the information, and I'm going to send you some stuff about me. I'm going to let you read that. Hopefully we get the chance to sit down and have a conversation. And my conversation is going to, first and foremost, to be about what you, the athlete, want. What do you want to get out of this? Because I can tell you a whole lot of great things. I can tell you this great story. But in the end, does this meet your need? Because like I said earlier, I love it, but I'm trying to make a couple nickels out of it. I can't do that if you're not in the right space. I can't do that if you're not happy. I can't do that if you're not healthy. I can't do that if you're not in the right mindset. I can't do that if you don't understand what's going on. Because if you don't understand what's going on and something happens, what's the first thing you're going to do? First thing, either you're going to do it or somebody around you is going to tell you, okay, he got to go. I'm not trying to get to that point. So what I initially try and do is get you to try and understand the needs of the athlete, understand the environment around him or her, and then try and build a direction to move forward. And one of the other things I try to do is understand what the now. What do we need to do immediately right now to knock out some of the concerns? I can't take care of everything, but what can we do to massage and kind of calm some of the needs, some of the concerns, some of the fears of right now? And what I'm also going to do is talk to you, the athlete, about the entire situation. And I'm going to ask questions to understand the environment around you. I'm also going to, talk to, whoever else you bring in as a support asset to the situation. Because they also have to feel comfortable with me, because once we get to that point, let's just say you've got son or daughter, said child's 4 or 5-star high school athlete, and we're going to Power 4, Autonomous 4 institution. We've got about 30 offers. We know there's potential for financial compensation out there. We also have to slow down with said athlete's environment and make sure everybody in the environment is mature enough to understand what is going on.
So what is it other than money that you most often desire for your clients?
What else? I come back to being happy, healthy, and in the right state of mind. Because when you have that, we can put you on a path forward. We can put you on a path forward. We can build a plan for the future, whatever that looks like. If we don't have that, we're going to dissolve. It's not going to last long. If there's something going on within your inner circle, if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, or if you're not comfortable as an athlete in whatever environment you finally do choose to go off into, it's not going to work. It's going to be just like on, what was it, Sugar Hill with Wesley Snipes. And the brother told him, it won't work. It just won't work.
All right, so what's the next big move in the world of sports?
I'm going to say this, and ain't everybody going to be like it. Ain't anybody going to like it, but obviously, whatever the end game is with this Supreme Court ruling about revenue sharing, that's going in college. The television deals, whatever 2028 through 2032, 2033 looks like. But the actions of this incoming administration on January 20th, I forget who did it, but somebody asked the question on Twitter as soon as it seemed like he would win the nomination. Are we going to keep the LA Olympics? We have to understand what is going to happen in the next 4 years. 2025 is FIFA Club World Cup. 26 is the World Cup. 28 is the LA Olympics. And if you look at what this administration, we think it's going to, what it looks to be at least, it's some form of an oligarchy. It's numerous high-profile business people either getting cabinet positions, staff positions, having some sort of influence on whatever decision he decides to make. Those, we don't want, that folks don't talk about it, but the decisions, whatever decisions he decides to make also affect them. Because most of the organizations that they run are international organizations. FIFA can't handle, I don't think FIFA can get around an international incident anymore. They got away with putting a World Cup in Russia, 2018. You know, a lot of us stood on our moral and ethical and social, business when it came to Qatar in 2022. Whatever the plan is for immigration becomes a human rights crisis, now what? You've got a Club World Cup and a World Cup in this country. Hell, if just immigration alone, if they mess with that to the point where it's a complete dumpster fire, how are you going to get these countries in the U.S. to play? This is I think a $10 billion tournament coming up with the World Cup. How long can the IOC hold on coming off of what in the end was a pretty good Olympics in France? All things considered. There was social challenges, but all things considered, that Olympics in France kind of brought the Olympics back, at least the summer games. How long can the IOC just stand by if we've got a human rights crisis? Well, the human rights crisis is already here, but that's not here today. But how long can the IOC stand by if whatever comes after January 20th is a total dumpster fire? What do? Some of the past Olympics, you look at China, it took a couple of years, but eventually there was like a CNN, 60 Minutes, some documentary talking about the ugly side of whatever went on to get the games, to get whatever infrastructure that was built to be built, and then the execution of the games. Sooner or later, it may take a couple of years, but there's generally a documentary that tells all the ugly stuff. In this world of Twitter, it ain't gonna take long before somebody's on a Summer Jam screen with the ugliness of whatever happens after January 20th. Is the IOC gonna be able to swallow that down? Is FIFA gonna be able to swallow that down? And then, oh, by the way, in 2031, it's most likely going to be a joint bid from the U.S. and Mexico for the Women's World Cup.
That should be interesting. All right, so what do you think the sports world learned from the pandemic?
I think one of the things that should have been obvious is that all of the general financial power is on the two coasts, which in the sports with less revenue sharing, with looser revenue sharing regulations, has played out to where all the money and all your best teams are on the two coasts. You look at every team, most of the teams that we feel like survived the pandemic or came out of the pandemic okay, they were either on the two coasts or in the two biggest cities in the middle of the country, Chicago and Dallas. So that's the first thing and probably the biggest thing. Secondly is that, to take a European term, you can play the game behind closed doors. Excuse me. We may not like it. It may not look the same on television. It may not sound the same, but we can play these games without the fans. So that's number two. Number three, we got comfortable with streaming, and that's not even a sports thing. That's across our society as a whole. We got more comfortable with Netflix. What comes of that? Apple pretty much buys out all the MLS rights. Amazon's now in on the NBA. Amazon got the Thursday night. Apple covers some of the regional baseball coverage now. Look at what the NFL has done now for the last 2 years. Christmas Day, Netflix. Playoff game on Peacock exclusively. So that's the third. Those are the three, I think, the three biggest things.
All right. So in addition to the things that you've already discussed, revenue sharing, the Supreme Court decision, potential fallout from the incoming administration related to international sports, is there anything else, any other major events coming up in 2025 potentially, or 2026 that you want to discuss today?
Melvin, so that's a great question. I would say, especially as Black folks, our HBCUs. You look at the timeline of George Floyd, Coach Prime, to where we are now, and Michael Vick across the water with the Beholders, that school that shall not be named.
Yeah, we didn't talk about you being a student at Hampton. So.
Yes, I am a Hampton man through and through. So we will. I put this on Twitter. As a Hamptonian, I'm sick, but as a Virginian, I can shout right now. We just need Pastor to get that collection plate moving, and I would shout. But yeah, watch the direction of our HBCUs. Our two major conferences, the SWAC and the MEAC, they're up for television deals very soon. Celebration Bowl did a 2.1 or 2.2 this year. That's up from last year when they did a 1.4. You now have an alternative media space, YouTube, podcasts, that type of space where you have conversations and daily coverage of our HBCUs now. So I would say that from obviously from an athletic perspective, but also from an educative perspective, there's over $13 billion that we know about owed to our land grant institutions. So what is especially with January 20th coming, what does the process look like for our HBCUs to get what's owed to them and begin to level set themselves, especially from a financial perspective, because that's one of the great ongoing conversations within the community. Is the direction we need to go to stabilize ourselves financially. So yeah, that's the other thing I would look for within the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay, and that's a good way to wind up the conversation. First episode of the year. So that's some good, encouraging news, something to look forward to. Thanks a lot, Adam.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a good way to end it up. So we will wind up this conversation today with our guest, Adam Lee Spencer. Adam, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been a fun conversation to kick off our third season on Stories from Real Life. Thank you for being my guest today.
Melvin, I appreciate your time and your platform, brother.
Well, thank you for joining me and getting up early on the West Coast. I really appreciate that. So that's it for this week's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another great storytelling journey. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.